This is a great bottle of wine. It's one of my favorites, actually. It's superb. It has been picked from grapes from the foothills of the Pyrenees. It's farmed using organically, environmentally sound processes. It's one of the most beautiful flavored wines, a balance of blueberry and blackberry. It is absolutely superb. Who here today would give me £65 for this bottle of wine? No one? £65 would be a bargain in some circles. Okay, I can see there's no takers at £65. So how about I drop my price by a third? Would anybody here today pay £40 for this bottle of wine? No takers? Well, oh, there's some at the back there, but you developers, you're a really astute crowd. You really drive a hard bargain. So, I will bring my price down even further. £65, my original price. How about £21? Any takers at £21? Yes, a man at the back and a lady in the middle there. I'm starting to get some takers, but I can see I haven't convinced you all yet. I'm going to really push myself on price here. My grandmother would turn in her grave if she knew I was offering this bottle of wine to you at this price. But will anybody take it for £18? No? Okay, you're really working me hard here. Right, this is the last offer, absolute final offer. $8.99. Who would buy this bottle of wine for $8.99? Oh, I've got a lot more hands. That's good. Because actually, I bought this bottle of wine for $5.99 in Tesco's earlier on today. Yes. So what's going on here? Well, I'll come on to that in a second. I'm a web consultant. I generally work on e-commerce and digital projects. I've been in the field for over 10 years now. And I started thinking a few years ago about why we actually make the decisions to purchase items and why we put so much emphasis on value. I'm going to do a little experiment with you now. And I don't know if this will work, it might, but what I'd like you to do is all put your hands on your laps, just in front of you. And I'd like you to intensely stare at your hands, really hard stare. I'd like you to look down right now at your hands really hard. And I'm going to count to 10. Then when I finish counting to 10, you can look up. So, 1, 2, keep looking down. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, you can look up again. Right. Has anybody noticed any changes at all? You'd be surprised, but a lot of people will not notice. As I say, you're developers, you're a very astute crowd, so you maybe notice that I'm a pirate. Is there anything else wrong with this?
There's blood dripping down your hand.
Your walk can salt here.
Oh, well done. Who didn't spot that? Anyway, this is one of the tricks that our brain sometimes plays on us. And It didn't work here because, as I say, developers, very astute crowd. But when we take our attention away from something, we generally don't recognize that a change has taken place. It's, you may have seen it on those funny comedy shows where they have a concierge at a desk and he's a man, and then they distract the person and they come back with a woman, and suddenly the person who was talking to them didn't have a clue that it changed. It's something called inattention blindness. Now, it's one of the little tricks that our brain plays on us when we're actually trying not to take too much information in, because our brains aren't that good at taking information in. In fact, there's some estimates that estimate that it's only 200 to 300 kilobits of data a second that we can process. That is pretty low compared to some of our machines that we've got here. So what our brain tries to do is filter out all of those external forces that might distract us in the real world. And that's why sometimes we don't notice changes when we look away. I've actually got a pretty good example of this. I buy train tickets all the time through eastcoast.co.uk, and this is what it used to look like. It's a very nice website. It presents your train tickets beautifully. I recently booked on eastcoast.co.uk to come down here to London, and I was surprised because I got all the way through the booking process, and then it wasn't until the tickets arrived in my mailbox that I realized, oh wait, it says Virgin on my tickets. What's going on here? And sure enough, I went back to the website and it was all branded Virgin. What the hell was going on? Well, I was so focused on my task of buying train tickets that I didn't actually notice any of the color changes or the logo change. I mean, if you ignore the fact that it's red and purple, there isn't much different here. You've got from and to, a date, and as soon as you get into the process of actually getting on with a task, you actually forget about the rest because you don't have enough processing power to process everything on the page. Which is why I tell some of my clients, if you're going to update your brand, update your website at all, shout about it. Because the thing is that you've worked on this project for days, weeks, months, and you've seen the changes incrementally, and you think they're fantastic. But the thing is that a customer only comes back once every blue moon, may not notice. So it's really important to make sure that we educate our customers that we're constantly improving the user experience for their benefit, or changing a brand, like here. So, back to the wine. Why were some of you willing to pay £20, £18, £8.99 even, for a bottle of wine that was only worth £5.99? Well, one of the processes, it's not the only one, but one of the processes that was going on was something called anchoring. And this is a deficit within the brain. Basically, it comes back to that information processing. We can't process too much information. So generally, we think that the last answer that we heard is pretty close to being accurate. It's a basic survival mechanism that's happened over many, many millennia, that we're generally doing the same tasks again and again. So why wouldn't the last answer be as good as the next one? Which is why when you see £65 as your original estimate, you start to compare everything to that £65, even though it's completely not the right value. So, moving on, anchoring is a process that happens right the way throughout the marketing funnel or purchase funnel. I'm sure we're all aware of this, working in e-commerce. As we get more awareness about a product, we start to refine our anchor. At first, we have no idea what a product's worth when we first see it. But as we start to gain knowledge and start to understand more about the product we're going to buy, we refine it to a point where we can actually be within pennies of the right value, and we will not accept anything that's not within that value range. So that's all very well and good in theory, but what does this mean in practice as e-commerce store owners? Well, if you've got a completely unique product, one that has that most people would never see on the market and that is completely out of this world, like a banana pool table, then it's a great place to be in the market, because you could set your own anchor. You can say whatever you like is the price of that. I mean, I have no idea how much a banana pool table goes for, but it looks pretty impressive. So thousands, hundreds of thousands, who knows? But when you're in a saturated market, it suddenly becomes a little bit more difficult to actually to set an anchor that is different to your competitors. I come to the example that we all know. It's our Magento is an online store. For the layman, a lot of people would think, well, Magento's an online store, Shopify's an online store, Zencart's an online store. They all do the same thing, don't they? But what makes them different is that each of these brands work hard to make sure that their differences are the thing that makes them add value. They each have a USP. Magento, it's really flexible. You've got a network of developers that can all work on it. Shopify, it's very simple to set up, but you don't go and get the customization that you get with Magento. And value is something that can only creep in when you've got a USP that is set above the baseline. So one of the things that many people have seen before, and this is something that is used all over, is something called a negative anchor. You can actually set an anchor within your own product range. And we've all seen it. Cinema, we're in the cinema. Oh, I think I'll have a popcorn. What, £3.20 for a small? Oh, but it's only 40p more for a medium. Oh, and 20p more than that for a large? Oh, well, I definitely won't be buying a small. It's something that's so simple to set within your own product range, but it has such a massive effect on the way that your customers perceive value. And I'm sure you've all seen this, and I'm not sure this was done intentionally, but we've got a similar effect that happens with the Apple Watch. The sports version looks like an absolute bargain when you actually directly compare it to the edition. I'm sure they didn't do that on purpose. This is a practice that is so we're so overexposed to as customers. It happens in subscription models, gym memberships, Spotify memberships, Amazon Prime Video Instant, whatever they've decided to call it this week. They set £72 a year for your video online streaming, but for only £7 more, you get free delivery for a year. You're using the negative choice in order to reinforce how good value the whole packages. So I'm going to talk about one more trick that our brain likes to play on us today. And do you ever loss aversion? It's the motivation to stick with a losing position, despite the logic of changing tack. And what do I mean by that? Well, you know when your favourite band announces their latest tour, and you go straight to the website to book your tickets, and you get the most amazing tickets, right in the middle, right up front, and you just want to go and purchase those tickets, but then you see this. The website's overloaded, you've got 0 CSS on the page, you keep getting messages saying our server's overloaded, come back later, and you're sitting there at your desk at work, hoping your boss doesn't see how frustrated you are, you've needed the toilet for the last half an hour because you just can't let go. Well, that's a form of loss aversion. It's when the loss is too much to suffer. And our emotional reaction to loss is actually double that of our emotional reaction to gain. That's why if a product is surprisingly good, I shouldn't be saying this as a UXer myself, but you can have the worst checkout process in the world and you will still get sales because people really can't give up on that product. Obviously, we're all great Magento developers and none of us want to have a terrible checkout because we want to get those extra few percentage of people who will not stick around. But there are times when there aren't so many extreme emotions involved in loss aversion. For example, we might have a product and there's only one left in stock. And I'm thinking, there's only one left in stock. I really don't want to lose out on this product. How did that get up there? Anyway, moving on. What we've talked about so far are what are called cognitive biases. I don't want to go into too much detail about this because it deserves a whole semester of psychology in itself. But we've got two parts of our brain. One that's thoughtful, that's slow, that's introspective, that solves problems. And the other that's lightning quick, that makes decisions instantly. The quick part of our brain has pre-programmed functions. They're there for a variety of reasons, from survival mechanisms to beneficial social interactions. Our brains really like to take these shortcuts if they can. And normally it's not an issue. But as we've seen with some of the cognitive biases that we've talked about so far, they can sometimes override our logical thought processes. There's currently over 100 cognitive biases that are recognized by science, plus about 80 or so social and memory biases, which are similar sorts of things. Not all of them are relevant to e-commerce. Here's just a few of them. A couple of my favorites, the Ikea Effect. If you build something yourself, you put far more value on it. I don't know what Ikea did to manage to sponsor that effect, and the curse of knowledge. As developers, we should all know this one. the inability to understand why other people can't understand what we understand. Anyway, before I leave you, I'm going to talk slightly about ethics. And we've all seen this before. This isn't a religious philosophy. This has actually been part of every philosophical, psychological, religious, and societal belief system since we were able to think of ideologies. But I prefer another philosopher who put it a little bit better. Bill S. Preston of Bill and Ted, be excellent to each other. And the question you have to ask yourself is, if we know about these faults in our brains and we start using them, where does the ethical boundary actually appear? Are we allowed to, say, for example, use loss aversion and set a cookie on a person's computer so that every time they come back, you inflate the price slightly? Is that ethical? The airlines a couple of years ago certainly thought it was, but then they got slapped on the wrist for it, and that's no longer practiced. What about something that I'm sure many of you in this audience will know? If you're a Mac user, is it ethical to show Mac users higher priced items because they're a stronger purchaser? I certainly wouldn't want that happening to me. So again, I keep coming back to this. If you don't want it done to you, don't do it to others. Otherwise, play around, get A/B testing. See what pricing configurations actually work within your product range. Do something interesting with user experience. I'm going to leave you with one more thought, and that is, life's too short for boring socks. Thanks. I've been Kris.